Hear that? Not the sounds outside, not the voices in your head. If you stay still and silent enough, you may just hear your heartbeat. And if you listen carefully enough, you may hear the heartbeats of everyone around you. In this busy life full of commentary and observation, we sometimes forget to pause and enjoy the pleasure of just sitting still and listening. And by listening, we learn. Good evening. It's wonderful to have you here tonight to spend some time listening and to learn from the amazing Dr. Jodie Richardson. Grammar has a strong commitment to being a school of wellbeing, and I'm delighted that this evening it is an opportunity to work with our community and the wider community of Launceston on this important topic. It's also an opportunity for you to access tools which will help us support our children to be healthier, stronger and more resilient in a world that is increasingly forecast to be less predictable. At Grammar, we have identified 5 key pillars of wellbeing to shape our learning framework: the spiritual, the social-emotional, physical, academic and psychological. We know that proactive work in the area of psychological health is critical as a foundation for life success. We are well into the Resilience Project on the senior campus. We've also completed a school-wide audit of our offering where wellbeing naturally intersects with our learning. Our staff are excited to be working in this space, and at the end of this term, we'll tell you a lot of exciting news about our future direction in wellbeing. Over recent years, we've been through a significant period of disruption, and this has resulted in many people around the globe to start to recognise the A word, which has snuck into our lives, invited or not. And quite often, it feels a little bit different to what it used to be like. As adults, we are naturally concerned for our children. We tend to create a crystal ball of what life success will look like for them and their futures. And we become fiercely protective when that crystal ball changes form, because it might be from a significant sports injury or a serious life illness, or there'll be grief or changes in key relationships that children have. This level of concern from us is a natural response. In fact, it might even make us feel anxious. But as adults, we better understand self-regulation and care. We can likely rationalise with greater ease and have developed coping mechanisms. We're concerned that our children's world is We are concerned that our children's world is far more challenging and they won't have the skills for success or to be able to deal with significant changes like we can. We need to be mindful not to project our anxiety onto them and rather meet them where they're at. We need to listen and create those environments where our child feels safe and at ease to open up with you, but sometimes we don't live in a nirvana and the best laid plans will fall short. There is no single magic bullet when it comes to dealing with anxiety. We have to look for different ways to work with our children and their challenges and possibly ours. And that's why we're here tonight. We know that there is a predicted tsunami of psychological wellbeing issues for our young people. This demands that schools and families come together to work with and empower our amazing young children to be proactively engaged in working on their coping mechanisms as good humans, so they may achieve wellbeing balance so necessary for great life outcomes. Good people of Launceston, thank you for coming out on this chilly night. They told me that this is the coldest to get this year. And please, join me in welcoming Dr. Jodie Richardson, an expert in her field, who will tonight take us on a journey of how to step up and work with your children when anxiety appears.
It's so lovely to be here, and I'm not the least bit cold, so you don't have to worry about me. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm here tonight to talk to you about a topic that is very, very dear to my heart, and it's not just a topic, it's something that I live with. And so when I speak with you this evening and talk to you about parenting anxious kids and teens, believe me when I say that I am a parent of an anxious teen, I was an anxious teen, I was an anxious kid, and now I'm an anxious mum. And so it's a topic I know very, very well from a whole range of different angles, and it's something that I care very deeply about. When I talk about anxiety, one of the great things I want to do is really normalise it to begin with, to help you understand what it is, because it can be quite frightening. We start to think about anxiety, are our kids becoming anxious? What does that mean for them? What's the future going to hold? And anxiety really is about anticipation of a threat. So that's when it happens for us, when we're anticipating something. It's about future thinking. It's not what's happening in the moment, it's what might happen. And so it's easy to become anxious about our own kids' anxiety. So it's a bit of a vicious circle. So I'm a parent of two. I share stories about my family with permission, and I just want to start with this. That's not my family. Parenting, aside from these little explosions, parenting's tough, isn't it? It's so tough. You know, little people, little problems, big people, big problems. I don't know, it's all tough, I think. There's so many different challenges at different ages. And I'd love to start by getting a bit of a show of hands as to what kind of ages you might have, and you'll no doubt put your hand up more than once. Some of you will put your hand up more than once. If you've got a child sort of between the ages of 0 to 5. Yeah, thank you. And what about 6 to 10? Yeah. And what about 11 to 15? Yeah. 16 to 20? 21 and older. Yeah, hey, we got the whole gamut. Thank you very much. Look, it's you know, anxiety is a challenge, and there seems to be so much more of it. I've had so many great conversations today with staff here at the Grammar, and I just feel that it's just really timely for us to have this conversation and for you to learn what is it, what triggers it, what's happening, what do I say and do when something happens, and I can see that it's anxiety, and how do I help my child to sort of settle their anxiety and get on with living life. And you know, I like to say I thrive with anxiety. I have an anxiety disorder. I have had for a very long time, in fact, since I was 4. This is little old me in my prep class in 1979. And that makes me 49, just to save you the maths. I loved school at the beginning. I've always loved school, really. I've always been quite a nerd, to be quite honest. But I wasn't happy for very long when I started school, because I started to have an upset tummy every day. Nobody understood why, least of all me. It was like a facelift every day with the pigtails. Mum was such an anxious mum with such perfectionism. It was the most perfect part right down the middle, pulled tight, and you know, I had it in my DNA, I suppose. And 30 to 50% of all of us will have the genes for anxiety in our DNA. We can see it coming down through families. And you know, I share again about my own mum. Anyone I share about, I do so with permission. I was starting school at 4, as we did back in the late 1970s, and as you can see, it was a huge class of preps. Little 4 and 5-year-olds, there's 53 of us in that photo, which is massive, isn't it? And the 2 teachers worked together, so that was in team teaching, but it was very stressful for them. And what we know about stress and anxiety is it's contagious. If you're in an environment that's very stressful, you'll pick up on it. Our nervous system picks up on that, and that's something that sort of drives that anxiety nuts. So if our kids come home from school and we pick them up, we can see it on their faces, can't we? And they're feeling anxious, then we can immediately sort of have that threat in our brain triggered, and we can start to feel anxious too. Equally, when we're struggling with our stress levels or anxiety, our kids can pick up on that also. So one of the great things about tonight, so I'm so grateful to be here, is because as parents, we have the most influence on our children's mental health. Not psychologists, not doctors, not psychiatrists, not teachers, parents. Because we help to shape them as they grow. There's so much we can do. So much we can do. So this is me, upset tummy, come home from school, Mum, I feel sick, I don't want to go to school. And Mum would say, bad luck, you're going anyway, with love. I didn't look sick, didn't have a fever, didn't have a rash, wasn't vomiting, except one day I did. Actually vomited all over the kid in front of me while I was cross-legged having the roll taken, and I felt vindicated that day. I did get to go home. But I'm thankful she sent me, because every day at school matters. Every day that you're not doing something because of anxiety, it gets a little bit harder to do it the next. So fast forward to high school, and something went terribly wrong with my hair. Honestly, my kids are like, how could you show them that? I said, because it's funny. So, one of the girls in the front row, who shall remain nameless, I got permission to dye my hair to bleach it, and it went orange, and so she said, quick, come and stick your head in the white king. Yeah, and I went, okay. That's what happened, so don't do that. This is me in year 8, still with an anxiety kind of disorder, I guess, really building. It was really starting to get in the way of life, and I didn't know. I just thought everybody worried all day, every day, like me. I just didn't know there was anything different or wrong. Not that you're broken with anxiety, you've just got a brain that just is really sensitive to threat. And I was starting to play a lot of high-level netball and feeling a lot of pressure on myself to perform. And I started having breathing trouble on the netball court, and I got taken to the doctor and given an asthma pump, diagnosed with asthma. No, it wasn't asthma, it was anxiety, even the doctor didn't know. Incidentally, we had no wellbeing dog at our school. I have no idea whose dog that is. The photographer just did a great job of capturing that moment. So still year 8, through high school, exams, everything, put a lot of pressure on myself. Eventually, I left school and went to university and studied teaching. And I was a teacher for 5 years at Peninsula Grammar. So I'm from the Mornington Peninsula in Victoria. I flew over this morning to your beautiful state. I love it here. And this is me. Still with an actual, like a full-on anxiety disorder now. And it's really getting in the way. And still, I didn't know. My parents didn't know. My then boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, he was just often fielding phone calls from me where I'd ring up and say, you know, this happened, and seeking reassurance. Can I get a show of hands if anyone here sees a lot of reassurance seeking? Like a child saying, I'm worried about this, and then the parent will say, it's going to be okay, or do we see a lot of reassurance seeking? Yeah, so it's about sort of sharing a worry and looking for someone to say, look, it's going to be all right. And that's what I did. I wasn't not managing my own anxiety. I didn't know I had anxiety, so I think I can forgive myself for that. But I was looking after other people's kids, obviously as a teacher, and I loved it. But what happened eventually was that my nervous system was so activated all the time because of my anxiety that eventually my brain said, that's it, cannot do this anymore. And I ended up going into what's called dorsal vagal, which is shut down, and that comes from, you may have heard of the vagus nerve, comes from a theory related to the vagus nerve, and essentially I ended up experiencing major clinical depression, and it was just horrendous. And so I ended up, I guess, really taking a step back and having a look and going, well, I mean, I'd had anxiety most of my life, I just didn't know, but when I was so teary all the time, but there was no kind of reason for me to be, I realised I better go and ask my doctor what's happening. And what a turning point when she said, this is depression. I was like, hallelujah, there's a name for this thing. I felt like I was the only person in the world struggling, and I think that's what young people can feel with anxiety, that nobody's going to understand this. I'm alone in this. I don't know what's happening, but it doesn't feel good. Who's going to know? Everybody knows we all experience anxiety. Thankfully, I got the help I needed. It was my third psychologist, who was a total winner. He was amazing, and I spent a lot of time speaking with him. And eventually, I guess that turning point led me to where I am today. I left teaching to work for Beyond Blue, and I've done many things since. But I guess what I really want to tell you is that when it comes to anxiety, no matter where you are on the journey with your children, because we've got all sorts of ages here, and some of you will have adult children with anxiety, no matter where you are here now. And from this point forward, you'll know so much more than you did walking in this evening. There is so much you can do. But I also want you to remember that when we know better, we do better. Because some of you might hear some things tonight and go, oh, I haven't been doing that. It's like, that's okay. That's okay. We do the best we can with what we've got until we've got a bit more. And so that's the story of our lives, isn't it? We do the best we can with what we've got until we've got a bit more. So tonight you'll get that bit more. And I hope you'll all leave here feeling really empowered and so much more confident. And that's obviously what brings us here together. So I'm going to get you to talk to one another. I want you to start by just having a conversation. Please make sure nobody's left out. So the people that want to be left out, sorry. the times when my mum's been with me as I've been presenting, she has terrible anxiety, you know, she has an anxiety disorder. She finds it very hard to talk to strangers. Most people do. But this is almost like a little bit of practice that you can feel a little bit anxious about something and still do it because it's important. And that's a really good lesson for our kids as well. I know I got you there, didn't I? So, not anyone in particular, but it's true. When something is important, we can bring our anxiety with us. So if you do feel a little bit anxious, that's okay. That's okay. Recognise it. Press your feet into the floor, just bring your attention to your feet on the floor, ground yourself a little, and enjoy the opportunity to have a chat. So what am I going to ask you to talk about? Just have a chat about what you're seeing in your home, why you're here. Just have a chat. You'll find an ally next to you, I promise. Okay? Away you go. There's a little lull. I'm going to take advantage of that. We'll have plenty of time to talk. So I hope that you found that was enlightening and an opportunity to share with a fellow parent that, you know, what we know about anxiety is that even before COVID, 1 in 4 on average adults will experience anxiety that is going to be derailing for a while in their lifetime. So in this, statistically, even if you've got me in the room, then it's a little bit better, but statistically it's really common. And we know that since COVID there's been an absolute sort of upswell in anxiety amongst children and teens, and sometimes I get asked, and we'll have a chance for some questions later too, sometimes I get asked, well, how young has anxiety been diagnosed? And sometimes, you know, it's a bit of a watch and wait for really little kids, but sometimes psychologists will confidently be able to sort of look at a little 3 or a 4-year-old and see signs of anxiety, but not all anxiety is a problem. Not all anxiety is a problem. Most anxiety is actually completely normal. Completely normal. So what happens is we might feel anxious in response to some sort of a challenge. So your child might be learning to ride a bike and had a fall, and that caused pain. And so the next time they've got to get on their bike, they're worried, what's going to happen? What if I fall again? But the anxiety will build, they'll ride the bike, they're okay, they have a soft landing, and then the anxiety settles back down. That's normal. Every single day, all of us as adults, we're going to experience anxiety. We get a phone call from someone we don't want to talk to. We're getting, the boss says, I need a meeting with you later. Bosses should all say, I need a meeting with you later, all good. Because then you don't have that anticipation. So we all know that feeling. It's not a nice feeling, but it's not dangerous. And so down this end, there's completely normal anxiety. Anxiety that will rise if you're going for a job interview, or if you're taking your driver's license test, if you're 18. Can you get your license here at 17 or 18? Oh, lucky kids. So 17, going for your driver's license, asking someone on a date, going for your first job, you know, you're applying for a part-time job. Normal, of course. And so there's normal anxiety, and then at this end, I'm going to be careful not to trip. At this end is anxiety, if we talk about a spectrum, anxiety that is frequent, extreme, and getting in the way of daily functioning. Okay? frequent, extreme, and getting in the way of daily functioning. And then there's everything in between. So it's a spectrum. So you might leave here tonight thinking to yourself, hey, yeah, I thought this was more of a problem, that it actually is just something I'm observing, but it's settling down. It's not getting in the way. It's not stopping my child doing anything. They're able to still function fully and do all the things that they love and want to do and rise to challenges. That anxiety is really normal around that. You might also go, oh, hey, you know what, I've come along tonight, now I'm thinking, well, I think, because when you're at this end, this is when it's really important to start speaking to your GP, talk to your doctor, start to get some support around you. And you might be thinking, all right, well, I wasn't sure, now I know, and that can be a little bit frightening too, if we think that our child's having, you know, some problems with their mental health that may, you know, be a big challenge for them. Might be for a while, but what I can tell you about anxiety is once you start to get treatment and support, it'll start to settle and your child will start to understand more about themselves and what works, and you will too. If you're at this end and you're feeling a bit like, oh, I'm a bit concerned, rest assured that this is a gift, because I went through 20 years of undiagnosed anxiety and really just worrying all the time. I don't remember much of my childhood, to be quite honest. I have a beautiful friend who I can ring if I need a little reminder. And because my laser focus was always on the threat, so I wasn't able to be present. Thankfully I was a good student, luckily, but you know, it can take away a lot. And I ended up having to go through a major clinical depression to get the treatment I needed. So if your child is down here, I know that that can be a bit frightening, but it's such a gift that you recognise it, you know, and you can get the help now, because it is treatable. It is absolutely treatable. So tonight I want to give you, there are going to be a lot of takeaways, but I'm going to make these 4 promises. Okay, so please feel free to take photos, obviously take notes, but these are the 4 key things I want for you. But you'll get a lot more, but I want you to be able to go, if someone said to you tomorrow, what did you learn last night? I'd love for you to be able to say, I understand it, okay? I know exactly how to respond. I know what to do if my child is avoiding something that's really anxiety provoking. And I also know how to help my child kind of dial it down. Even if you can just say, I understand what's happening now, that can be such a gift to begin with. So, understanding it. You don't have to read this text, I want to say that quickly. You do not have to read a word on this. All I want you to know is that in every little wedge, there is an emotion. Anxiety is one of them. And so we sometimes get a bit fearful about talking about anxiety. This is called the feelings wheel, and you can get it from feelingswheel.com. I actually have this printed on a cushion that I thought would be brilliant at teaching my children a larger, more nuanced vocabulary around their feelings. They don't want to look at it. Anyway, of course, with a mum like me, they see me coming a mile away. I'll have to donate it. Anxiety is one of these. And whilst we're pretty comfortable, aren't we, as parents, it's uncomfortable for us, but we can talk about sadness, we can talk about embarrassment, you know, gosh, there's so many on there, I don't know how many, but there's so many, I'll read some of them, you know, betrayal, provoked, infuriated, appalled, feeling awful, feeling hurt, rejected, anxious, bored, proud. You know, there's so many feelings. What the science shows us, so here's just another quick aside. We have an emotion and we feel it. So that's why emotions and feelings can be mostly interchangeable. So you might hear me interchange those terms. We're happy talking about a lot of them. We'll have these conversations. Anxiety just needs to become part of the conversation. Anxiety is really normal. You know, it's a part of life, and it shows up around what we care about. So we would never want to get rid of it, but it's an emotion that we can manage like the rest of them. And tonight, what I share with you, you can apply to other emotions as well, a lot of it, which is helpful. You don't have to read anything on here either. It's really just about colours. Can you see the red in the middle of the brain? Yeah. So, I'm going to use the... It travels that far. So the little red part, which is the amygdala. So I just really want to help you understand anxiety. Essentially, all of us have an amygdala, and its job is to keep us alive. So this part of our brain, it's fascinating and very powerful. Its job is to take in information from our environment, smells, sounds, sights, and process them very quickly to determine, is this safe or is this dangerous? Okay? And the whole point of this amygdala function is if it's dangerous, the fight or flight response is initiated very, very quickly. And when we are anxious, the same thing happens. The amygdala, which I call the brain's alarm, it's detected a threat somewhere. Okay? So when the brain detects a threat, the alarm sounds and the whole body goes into fight or flight. Okay? So that's what's happening when anxiety is present. I'll give you an example. So let's just say you were going for a walk around one of these beautiful parks here in Launceston or anywhere around your gorgeous state, and you were walking along, and all of a sudden, through your sense of sight, a snake and a little bit of a rustle in the bushes is seen and heard. The amygdala will take in that information faster than you can process consciously that there might be danger in the bushes, and you will recoil. I won't do it in my heels because I'll follow, but you would recoil quickly before you've had a chance to even register what's happened. And I was telling the teachers earlier when I spoke to them that I had a huntsman on my window. My husband was driving my car and it was on the outside of the window, so I went around to the passenger seat, and as I sort of went for the door, the huntsman was right there, and it was hilarious for him who was watching. It was very funny. My immediate reaction, even though I'm not that scared of spiders, was to recoil, because my brain goes danger, fight, or flight. And when it comes to huntsmen, we tend to not, fight. We get out. They've got 8 legs. So that was my evolutionary instinct, is to get away from danger. So that's what it's there for, to keep us safe. What happens with anxiety is that there's something coming up, okay? Because it's anticipation. It's the camp. It's speaking in front of the class. It's having the parents come to class to sort of, interact on special parent day or special person day. It's any change, uncertainty. There's a CRT, do you call it a CRT? Sorry if I got that wrong. Casual relief teacher, a replacement emergency teacher in the classroom that can totally derail some kids because it's unpredictable. And what happens when these things are happening in your child's world is the alarm starts sounding and they go into fight or flight. There's no danger. They're safe, they've just got a different teacher. Or they've been asked to share a little something in front of the class. Or they've been asked to pair up with the new student in the class. And that makes them feel, it sounds the alarm. So when the alarm goes off, the body goes into fight or flight, and it changes how we feel physically. At the same time that that's happening, the blue part of the brain, it's not really blue, but it's blue here, this prefrontal cortex behind the forehead is not available. So the instinct kicks in, like with the huntsman, I jump back quickly because my brain says, danger, get out. This part of the brain requires time to process, and so it's actually sort of cut off, it's sort of disconnected temporarily so that you don't have to waste time thinking and consciously planning. It would be like a committee meeting of the mind if you had to sort of involve this part of the brain. They all take too long. We just need the instinctive response to get out of danger, and so that part of the brain is not available. And this is why, if you have a very anxious little one, or big one, teenager, they will not be able to reason, they will not be able to think straight, they will not be able to be logical or rational. It's not the time for problem solving. They will not be open to any kind of verbal discussion in that moment. And that can be quite a light bulb, because, we've all probably tried it at some stage or another. Parenting, we're just always learning on the hop, aren't we? When your child's distressed and you're almost trying to say, there's nothing to worry about, you're okay. But in fact, it's not the time for that. There might be time for discussion later. They cannot process that. There will be no rational thinking happening from their point of view. You have to turn off the alarm. So the alarm's sounding, you have to turn off the alarm first. The other thing about this is that because they are heavily focused on the threat, they're not able to pay attention to the important things like learning. And so that's why some children who are highly anxious in class, they're not able to concentrate, okay, because their mind is on the threat. And I shared an example with the senior students today, because I'm in love with soccer at the moment, as most Aussies. I was reading some research, because I'm trying to learn more about goalies and their anxiety, because amazing, weren't they? Amazing to keep their cool. And what I read was that when a striker or somebody's coming in to kick a penalty, that when the scientists tested their perspiration, heart rate, breathing and tracking of their vision, the athletes that were more anxious, that had more sweating, higher heart rate, shallower breathing, their tracking of their vision was on the threat, which is the goalie. And so it's so interesting, our brains, when there is a threat, we will focus on that threat until that threat is excluded, because it's all about survival. So it's really interesting, and that's why sometimes you can find it's a bit hard to penetrate the thinking. This is why. So this is you can just relax your shoulders a little bit, that you don't need to do anything to solve this problem in this moment. There's something more important that we can all do. Okay, so you understand what's happening in an anxious brain. The alarm sounds because the amygdala has detected a threat. Now, here's something that I think will make sense. So that amygdala will detect a threat if your child steps out in front of a car. It will be what will hopefully get your child out of the way quickly. And that's a real threat, isn't it? It's a genuine threat to safety. But if your child or teen is lying in bed at night, thinking about a challenge they've got coming up the next day, the brain's alarm will sound and that whole system will kick in as if they just have to get out of the way of a car that's approaching them. So if they're imagining something, it will trigger exactly the same response. Okay? If they perceive something, it will trigger that the same response will happen, whether it's a real threat in the moment, which is rare, or an imagined one, which is common. So what I want your kids to know is that yes, we have this amazing survival system. Rarely is it sounding the alarm when we're in danger, but we have to tune in when we are in danger. We all have to know, and our kids need to know their gut. They get that gut feeling that something's not right. Don't overthink it. Just remove yourself from the situation. But often this alarm will sound when there's just a challenge or an opportunity or something that's a little bit unknown. We need our kids under those circumstances to recognise, oh, my brain thinks this is a threat. This is what's happening. My brain's got my alarms going. My brain thinks this is a threat, but I'm okay. I know I'm not in danger. And when we're not in danger and the alarm is sounding, there are things that we can do. It's really, really important for our kids, because blanketly, we could not get rid of anxiety if we wanted to. It's our inbuilt survival system. But we just want our kids to know that often it goes off, this alarm goes off, when there's a challenge or an opportunity or something they care about. And we want them to know the difference. So, I'm going to introduce you to 4 young people, because I want you to start to think about what anxiety looks like. What I would dearly love for all of your children to know is, what does anxiety feel like when it's starting? So I said to the senior students today, if you were to say, someone says to you, how are you going, and you say, I'm feeling stressed or I'm feeling anxious, how would you know? How would you know you're feeling stressed or anxious? What do you feel that helps you to know that? What can you recognise that's changing that tells you you're stressed? What if all of your children, as they grow up, they learn, oh, this is what it feels like for me. I was in the supermarket not so long ago getting Wheat Bix for my son. It's not a great nutritional choice for breakfast, but hey, that's okay. So off in the supermarket, in the cereal aisle, and I just started to well up and feel quite emotional. And the thing about the amygdala is it's part of the emotional processing centre of the brain. So we can get big feelings. So we can get big emotions like being quite teary, being quite sensitive to things happening around us, or being quite angry, which is the fight side of fight or flight. Anyway, I'm walking down the cereal aisle and I start to sort of feel like I could just cry, and I immediately realised, oh, I'm anxious. This is my first realisation I'm feeling anxious. So what I did was, I didn't want to cry and release. I'm happy to cry, just at home, it's fine. So I used my strategy, which was looking for colours. So lots of colours in the cereal aisle, and in my mind I'm like, this is pink, this is orange, this is green, this is blue, this is pink, this is purple, this is green. And that's a grounding strategy, using my senses. Okay, so I recognised my anxiety and I knew what to do to start to dial it back. And then I started to think about later, once I got out of Woolies, I could step back once it had settled down and try to figure out why I was feeling anxious, because sometimes it can just come on. So that's what I would love for your children, to know, okay, what does it feel like for me? So let's talk now about some kids who live with anxiety and what it feels like for them. Maybe there'll be some parallels. Maybe there'll be some things that you're seeing in your anxious child routine that you don't see here. It shows very differently for different kids. So this is Annabelle, and Annabelle is in prep, so she's 5, and Annabelle finds it very, very distressing to separate from her mum. She finds it really hard, so this is separation anxiety. She'll cling very tightly to mum's trousers, finds it very hard to be sort of separated to go into class. She gets very, very teary, very distressed. There's quite a lot of kind of, motivation to not let mum leave. Lots of crying, lots of pleading. Once mum goes, the teacher will say it does settle down, and Annabelle will be a frequent flyer to the school nurse. So she gets a little upset tummy, a bit like me as a kid, and she'll need to go to this, and the school nurses often see these little, because kids are looking for somewhere that helps them feel psychologically safe, and sometimes the classroom there's so much going on, it's a bit much for their little system, so they'll go to a place in the school where they feel, that they can sort of settle, even though they're not thinking it through, it's just what they know they need. So this is little Annabelle. She really does do okay with her classroom work. She could do a little bit better, but she worries a lot, and she has these physical symptoms. She'll complain of an upset tummy, and she'll complain of a headache, and so she disappears off to the nurse. So that's little Annabelle. This is Will. Will's in grade 5. And Will is a spunky little kid, and he loves his mates, he loves having a kick of the footy, he loves to get out, it's very social. But he's quite quick to anger. So it kind of feels like it goes from 0 to 10 on the anger scale sort of quite quickly. And he worries all the time. He's worrying all the time. And the reason you know that as a parent is because he's saying, Mum, I missed that goal of footy on Sunday. And oh my gosh, I've let the whole team down. And oh, Mum, I've got to do this piece of work and it involves some drawing and I'm not so good at that. I'm really worried. It's just constant voicing of what's worrying him and what if questions. What if I do that work and it's not good enough? So there's a lot of worries. You also know that in class, teachers will see that he's quite disruptive. He can't really sit still. He really has a lot of trouble sleeping, and he'll often wake up in the night and have a really hard time getting back to sleep. This is Padma. Padma's in Year 9. She puts so much pressure on herself. She's a real high achiever, and if you could see her hands, you'd see that she bites her nails down and she pulls her quicks, and they look so sore. She just is perfectionistic. She'll start over and over, and she'll focus on the things that aren't really that important. So she struggles to kind of see what's meaningful about this task versus what's just a little peripheral kind of like what's the right font for the heading. And that's procrastination. So procrastination can be a symptom of anxiety. So she's really high achieving, she performs very well, but she just about ruins herself in the process. She doesn't really want to talk about it, doesn't want to talk to mum or dad about it, but mum or dad can see quite clearly that there's quite a lot of anxiety going. She finds a lot of solace in her beautiful golden retriever. She loves to have a pat with the dog, and that really seems to settle her down. But she's having a hard time. She's having a hard time. And this is Chen. He's in Year 12. He is not a social young man, very committed to his studies, a lot of pressure. He feels a lot of pressure about doing well at school, and so he doesn't really do much other than study. He has some rituals about the things that he does. So he likes to set up his desk in a certain way. So the teachers will observe that he has certain things he likes to do in a certain order. At home, parents will see that he has certain rituals that he likes to do before bed. And so there's what you start to learn about Chen is he's got some thinking that he gets quite obsessive about, and so Chen's a likely candidate for an OCD diagnosis, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. And what happens there is obsessive thoughts and the compulsions are performed to try to neutralise the anxiety around the thinking. And so Chen has a really hard time of it and is quite rigid in what he needs to do, because if the rituals and the things aren't done in the right order or they're interrupted, he has to start again, because the thinking will say, if you don't do it like this, something bad's going to happen. Or the feelings, he wants to get rid of the anxious feelings. He can't cope with the feeling of it all, so he needs to do everything like, in a ritualised way, to sort of in an orderly way, to try to manage it. It's the best way he knows how to cope. So, what I would love you to do is to please have a chat again to the person that you chatted to before and share, did you see similarities in any of these kids with what you're seeing at home? Or are there other things that you're seeing? Because I haven't covered the whole gamut of what we can observe when it comes to what anxiety looks like. Have a chat. Did you see similarities or not at all? What are you seeing? What are you observing are the signs and symptoms of anxiety in the child that you're thinking about tonight? Okay? All right, away you go. I'm going to get... Okay, so some chocolates here. It's bribery, really. Does anyone want to sort of share whether or not they can relate to what I shared here with these 4 stories, or if there's something different? And there's no obligation, of course. We can move right along if you're not comfortable. But does anyone want to sort of throw in what you're seeing, or... Okay, that's okay. All good, no problem. So, when it comes to signs and symptoms, because it's really important for us to be able to see it happening, the way that we can understand it is that you as a parent, you'll see kind of what's above the surface here. You'll see the behaviours, and that will be your window into what could be happening. Because thinking is private. Unless a person voices what they're thinking, you will not know. You might see some sort of daydreamy kind of expressions, but unless somebody's sharing with you, we don't know what people are thinking. That's the beauty of, I think kids think everybody can read their mind until that age and they work out, and that's where the fun begins. So when it comes to anxiety, we can kind of categorise it in 4 different categories. Behaviours, thoughts, sensations, and feelings. So I've talked about the feelings before. They get the amygdala is part of the emotional processing centre of the brain. We get fight or flight. So with fight, we can get anger. We get lots of big sort of emotions that are hard to know what to do with sometimes. We can get tears, as I said, cereal aisle, Woolies, joy. That's when it comes to feelings. We've discussed that. When it comes to thinking, with anxiety, we can get some really black and white thinking, so all or none. lots of worrying, because the brain wants to focus on the threat. Brain wants to focus on the threat. So if your child comes home and said, I spoke to Jenny today and Jenny just ignored me. And I thought Jenny heard me, but then Jenny just joined another conversation. So that will be detected as rejection. That's rejection. That's threatening for a human person to be rejected. If you're on the outer, cool, no food for you, you could be in danger. So that's, again, this part of the brain it's protecting us. So that threat, so if your daughter were to come home and to express that, then that's obviously sounding the alarm for her. And so when she's thinking about that, that will sound the alarm. And the thoughts that she might be having are, well, what have I done to upset Jenny? That's a classic. Most of my life, I'm like, what have I done to upset that person? Because I'm interpreting facial expressions differently because of my anxiety. Not anymore. Because I'm medicating. Did I mention that? I'm not sure if I said that. I'm medicating now for my anxiety, and that's what it does is it gives me space between the alarm and being able to do something about it. So I tried for a very, very long time to use a whole lot of tools. I've got an amazing toolkit, but I just couldn't access it because my anxiety, because I'm at this end. I couldn't access it. So I started taking medication after our second daughter was born, and it's been a real game changer for me. That's personal for me. Obviously, I'm happy to share it, but that's what's made a big difference to me about how to access my tools. So when it comes to thoughts, we can have a whole lot of what if thinking. What if she doesn't talk to me tomorrow? What if there's a big problem? What if I'm not invited to it? What if? Catastrophic thinking, worst case scenario. Okay, they just go right from what we're thinking. And there are lots of other, worries that just sort of creep in and kids often don't even realise they're worrying. When it comes to sensations, this is a big one, and this is the reason why anxiety feels so frightening for all of us, but particularly for kids. When our brain detects a threat and the alarm sounds and we go into fight or flight, we have to be changed physiologically to be able to actually fight, defend ourselves. We're actually like powered up to fight or to run. So this is what happens, and this will help you make sense of the symptoms that you might see that are physical. And this is a big part of anxiety that I think is really important for young people to understand. When you are in fight or flight, you are powered up to defend yourself or run. And so this is what happens. Your heart rate beats faster to pump more blood around your body. Your breathing changes to bring in oxygen to create energy in your muscles. You have blood moved from your gut to your arms and legs so that you can fight or run. That's why kids will feel sick. They'll have butterflies. Butterflies can be nerves, but you can feel nauseated when you're really anxious. And some kids get the runs, they have diarrhoea. There can be frequent urination, and that's related to the tension in the smooth muscle around the bladder and other parts of the body. So there can be frequent trips to the loo. Sweating, perspiring, because the brain is predicting that you're going to fight or flee. Remember, the brain doesn't know that it's a test tomorrow. Doesn't matter if it's a test or a venomous snake, the brain and the body react the same. So the sweating system turns on because the brain's expecting movement, fast, high intensity movement, which will make the body hot. So the cooling turns on, which is the perspiration. There can be shakiness. There can be trembling because of all the adrenaline in the body. Dry mouth, because digestion, that's part of the digestive tract. And so it can be hard to sort of speak properly sometimes. It can be dizziness and lightheadedness and changes to vision. It is absolutely extraordinary, the physical changes, and they can be so frightening if you don't understand them. And what happens with a panic attack is that a young person or an adult, any human, who can sense those feelings and is like, why is my heart racing? Why do I feel like this? I feel really weird, I'm feeling dizzy. And then there starts to be anxiety about the anxiety symptoms, and that can spiral into a panic attack. And that's just dreadful. I've had two. Two's plenty for a lifetime, trust me. So the physical symptoms all make sense, don't they? They make sense because we need to do something. We're powered up to do something. And yet if you're in a classroom, sitting down, listening to the teacher, and you're thinking, I'm not really strong at reading, and yet I think the teacher's going to ask me to read a passage. whatever it is that triggers and sounds that alarm, the body goes into fight or flight, and kids have all these feelings, all of this happening, but they might be just sitting in a chair, or they might be lying in bed. They've got all this going on. And so the trick, not the trick really, the key to be able to settle anxiety is to work with the body. We can't talk ourselves out of it. We remember we need anxiety, it's protective, we can't get rid of it, we wouldn't want to. It's what will keep your children safe when they are walking home and they realise that they're being followed by somebody. Or when this, I kid you not, this happened with my daughter on Saturday night. She was staying at a friend's. The dad had gone out, we knew that they're in a well-locked apartment, and the dad was coming home at about 8. Anyway, Dad didn't come home till a little bit later, and we were like, that's okay. Anyway, our daughter rang, and she said, our friends want me, let's just say her friend's name is Lisa, it's not. Let's just say her friend's name is Lisa. She said, our friends want Lisa and I to walk 20 minutes in the dark to their house, 10 o'clock at night by this stage. And the girl said, just do it, don't tell your parents. And our daughter's sort of thinking to herself, like, she's feeling that gut feeling, right? She's feeling that, I don't think this is very safe. And then they said, catch an Uber. One's 12, one's 13. Right? They're like, catch an Uber, come round. And my daughter's saying, her name's McKinley, she's saying, oh, I'm not feeling too comfortable with this. Just tell your mum that Sean was in the car, the dad, right? And our daughter, she's feeling these feelings in her gut. So do you know what she did? Oh, I was so proud of her. She hasn't always made good decisions, but she rang our house and I answered the phone and she said, this is a situation I'm in, I don't know what to do. So she listened to those feelings in her tummy that were saying, I don't think these are good ideas. We want our kids to tune in. We want them to tune in. We also want them to go, right, was this dangerous? Or is this, I'm feeling these feelings, this is an opportunity. Most often it'll be an opportunity or a challenge or something they care about. So the feelings, emotions, sensations in the body, thoughts, they all make sense. It's all about escaping the danger, focusing on the danger and escaping it. But you'll see it in the behaviours. You'll see the emotions coming out. You'll see avoidance. You'll see a lot of avoidance. Can't go to camp. I don't want to go to the party. I don't want to have a party. I really want money, but I can't go and put my hand up for a part-time job. I don't want to separate. I don't want to have a sleepover. I don't want to speak in class. And that's all protective because the alarm's sounding and the brain goes, get away from the danger. Get away from it. So it's natural to avoid. It's really natural. But you'll also see maybe can't sit still, can't concentrate, fidgeting, feel like moving, don't know what to do with themselves. Lots and lots of behaviours that you might see. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds and all I want you to do is I want you to have a quick chat just to say, does what you see at home make a little bit more sense now that you understand why it's happening? Does it make more sense now? Okay, away you go. I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask some questions sort of towards the end, but also after we finish here, if you'd like to come and have a chat with me, you're welcome to do that as well. Just in case you want to ask a question in public, because it's sensitive, I understand that. So yeah, hopefully now we've got the, and you'll see I want to keep reinforcing these messages. We've got the brain's alarm that sounds when the threat is detected, body goes into fight or flight. All of that comes with a whole lot of changes in the physiology that feel pretty yuck. That's a very scientific word, yuck. They feel awful. And when a child feels anxious, they don't like it because they don't understand it and they want it to stop. And so we can dial it down, but we can't just switch it off. You know, it kind of comes on like a switch. We can't turn it off straight away. Have you someone who've had to hire someone, or you've done something that's challenging you, a big presentation, and you feel anxious, and then you do it, and then the anxiety settles down, but it doesn't just turn off. It might take 10, 20, 30 minutes. Can you relate to that? You're kind of like, oh my goodness, it's done. But it doesn't, you know, it takes a little while because we're flooded with adrenaline, we're flooded with cortisol, we've got all these changes, we've got sugar being dumped into our bloodstream, we've got all these things that happen. And one of the things I'm going to talk to you about later is that when we want to dial down anxiety, one of the great things we can do is move, because the body is expecting you to fight or flee. You might as well do something. So that's what's happening. So it does settle, it just doesn't switch straight off. Before I talk to you about this, I want to give you another grounding strategy. What I'd really like for you to do is I'd like for you to, with your breath, I want you to, I might explain it and demonstrate it. We're going to breathe in through our nose, and then once we've breathed in through our nose, we're going to take another little sip of air, so a little bit extra, and then we're going to lengthen our exhale, preferably through our nose if we can. If you're congested, breathe through your mouth. So it goes like this. And you just lengthen that exhale. That's the trick. That's what I said to the teachers today. That's what I said to the students. This is called a physiological sigh. You know how the brain's alarm sounds? And all of those changes happen? Adrenaline, heart rate, breathing, sweating, blood being moved, blood sugars, all of that. The only thing we have any conscious control over is the breath. It's called the physiological sigh, and it is the most powerful strategy for showing the brain, showing the alarm, to turn off now. You can't just say to a person, you're safe, you're okay, it's okay, you don't need to be anxious anymore. We need to show the brain we're safe. This is a physiological sigh, and if you've got a very young person, a little ELCer, then you might use a pinwheel. You know those pinwheels? I usually bring one, but it gets a bit squished when I travel. So you can blow the pinwheel and that lengthens their breath. Or a hot chocolate breath, yeah, where they're blowing, pretend hot chocolate, so it's lengthening that exhale. With older kids, you can just teach them that the lengthening of the exhale is really important. Okay, what that will do is it'll help to dial down that anxiety response. So I just wanted to give that to you now, and you might want to do a couple tonight if this is all making you feel a bit anxious. Okay, responding. What on earth do we do when our children are highly anxious? When they're highly distressed in any way, what do we do? Not that. I take a poll everywhere I go because I'm trying to show Peter, my husband, that calm down isn't effective. Can I please have a show of hands if calm down has ever worked? Thank you. Clearly, saying calm down doesn't help. I'll tell you something else that doesn't help with a little story. So, this is the Bahamas. So I have a beautiful friend, her name's Christy. She works very, very hard, and every year she pretty much, she's a little gun, earns herself some sort of amazing overseas trip with her work. This one was to the Bahamas. This is a picture of the Bahamas. That's not me. Could have been me when she rang me one Monday night and said, I'm going to the Bahamas on Sunday. Can you come with me? Because her husband couldn't join her any longer. And I said, I would love to, but I've got COVID. I know. Oh, thank you. So that was the appropriate response, right? Not Peter. Peter comes in, oh, I'm going to take these off. Peter comes in and he's like, what's going on? Why are you getting a phone call on Monday night at 9:30? You know, what's going on? And I can tell by the tone of the conversation. And I told him, and he said, at least we got to go to Canberra. Which is where we picked up COVID. And then Joy vomited the whole way home. And she gave it to me. She was so empathetic. She's like, Mum, I'm so sorry I gave you COVID. I was like, you didn't give me, I think I gave you COVID, honey. She gave me COVID. So he's like, you know, he felt the pain of the can't go to the Bahamas. I mean, whenever do you get asked to go to the Bahamas? Like, seriously, this is all 100% true. Everything I tell you is true. It's just like a bit unbelievable, but yeah, I couldn't go. And so he felt the pain of that, you know, disappointment, and he was trying to make it better. So, what can we do? And I want to just preface this. I've got a video by Brene Brown. This is just a short video, 2 minutes, I think. What can we do instead when our kids are distressed? Anxiety being one distressing emotion. What can we do instead? And I just want to preface this by saying this is what makes a big difference, but it doesn't come naturally to everybody, okay? Especially my husband.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space where someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, I'm down. I know what it's like down here. And you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. I have it, yeah. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Isn't that beautiful? I have a very triggered sensory startle reflex, you will have noticed. Rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection. When our children are activated in the way that happens when they're in fight or flight, the most powerful way to help them regulate their own nervous system is to share your calm with them. And that's why I'm sharing with you equally tonight the strategies that I share with you to take home to your children. Please use yourselves. Look after yourselves. It is our nervous system. Children don't learn to regulate their emotions on the naughty step, alone, in time out, by themselves. They learn to regulate their emotions when they are with an adult who can remain calm in the face of distress with them. But how hard is it to stay calm when we're upset because they're upset? It's so hard, isn't it? It's really tough. And our ability to recognise that this is distressing, but I can cope with this, I can do this. You can release your emotions later, express how you feel, have a cry later on, or go and punch a punching bag, or go for a run. But in the moment with our kids, all we want to do is let them express how they feel, and that us just being a calm presence who's there to listen and show empathy will teach them that these emotions, yes, they're big, but they're not that scary, and you're safe to experience them. And that's one of the most powerful things that we can all do. We can all do. And it's so hard because all we want to do is fix it. Yes?
Does that apply to anger?
Does that apply to anger? I think all emotions are okay, not all behaviours are okay. And so if anger is coming out in a way that's harming someone or damaging something, then that's a different situation. But yeah, it's A-okay to express anger. I think that's one of the hardest ones to express, isn't it? And so it could be, for a little kid, it'd be stomping their feet, or whacking a balloon, or throwing a ball as hard as they can, to see how far they can get around a wall. We need to be able to safely express emotions and model that for our kids. And that's why you could say when you come home from work and you've had a really crappy day, oh my gosh, I was so angry at work today. Oh my gosh, I didn't know what to do with myself. So do you know what I did? I went outside and I ran on the spot. You're not probably going to do this necessarily at work because you're in heels maybe, or a suit, but just whatever it is that you do, share that with them. They learn by what you do more than what you say, and by who you are and who you're being with them. And so if you feel anxious, you can say, oh gosh, I had to do something at work today. Oh, it made me so anxious. So what I did was I just pressed my feet into the floor and I grounded myself, and I did 3 of these breaths by length of my exhale. You know what? It was enough for me to be able to go into that meeting room and deliver what I need to do, and I'm really proud of myself. It was really hard. I still felt anxious, but I did it anyway. It's called coping out loud. When we can share our difficulties, because we're human. We need them to know that life is not all roses. It is not normal to be happy all the time. Everybody has ups and downs. All feelings are important, and it's okay and safe to express them. And so empathy is beautiful, and it's not easy for everyone, I know that. And so some of you might, look, I said calm down to Peter once when he was getting really stressed in the car, right? He's never let me forget it. And I know I do empathy very, very well. It's natural for me, but we're not always going to get it right? We're not always going to show empathy when empathy is asked for. We just keep working on it. And things like saying, oh, that sounds so hard. If they come home from school and they're upset about something, or distressed or anxious, you can just say, oh my gosh, yeah, I understand why you felt anxious about that. I would too. I get it. That sucks. However, whatever language you want to use. But just kind of let them feel how they feel. Sometimes they'll feel a particular way and you'll be thinking, what? I don't quite get this, but anyway, it's their perspective. It's their truth in that moment. They'll see it from a different perspective later, but empathy in that moment of distress is really, really powerful. So, I don't want to spend long on this next section, because this next section is very, very easy for me to explain. You've no doubt heard of this before, but I just want to tell you this. Avoidance fuels more anxiety, because if something feels unsafe, and then the parent says, oh, you don't have to do it, that just says to the brain, it must have been dangerous. Phew, lucky we didn't do it, well, let's not do it next time. So avoidance makes anxiety worse. Trust me, it does. All right, so avoidance is a big part of anxiety, and it's natural. The brain says, danger, danger, let's get safe again. So what we need for children to know is, okay, I can feel these feelings, my brain's detected something, I'm feeling anxious, that's okay. I can use one of my strategies, dial it down, and I can still move forward. McKinley was very, very upset, very disappointed about a cancelled camp in COVID. Victoria lockdown was awful. And she was very upset, but it was a school day. It was one of the rare days we were off to school. She was crying before school. We sat on the couch, and I said, I understand. I was very empathetic. I had plenty of time to be empathetic. Sometimes it's hard, isn't it, when we're in a rush? Sometimes the empathy has to come on quick. So I had time, and I'm like, really sorry. I know it's terrible. It's so disappointing. I understand. I was so looking for a grade 5 camp at this primary school was the best. And so, anyway, we sat for 10 minutes. She expressed how she was feeling. She was crying. I was just cuddling her and just saying, just not much by the end, just sitting with her, trying not to fix it, just sitting there, listening, holding myself together. And I said, what have you got left to do to get ready for school? And she said, I've got to clean my teeth. And I said, all right, look, I think probably time you clean your teeth because we need to get going. And she said, I'm just so disappointed. I know, honey, but you can be disappointed and clean your teeth at the very same time. And she was like, whoa. And she did. She took her disappointment with her and cleaned her pearly whites. Not very well, she needs feeling. But the point I'm making is this. Our kids will wait, and we do it as adults too. We wait to feel good till our ducks are in a row to move forward and do the thing that's a bit tricky, a bit hard, a bit challenging. What I want all your kids to know is you can feel a bit anxious, you can feel a bit disappointed, you can feel a bit sad. We don't want it to be off the charts. We want to give them time to express it, process it and settle it, but then they can move forward. They do not have to wait until they feel great to do what matters. Really and truly they don't. And that's how you get ahead. That's how you get to do the things that are exciting, that are opportunities. Because you recognise, oh, I feel a bit anxious because I care about this, but I can take it with me. It's not a stop sign. It's a stop sign for so many people. Truly it is. It doesn't have to be. I'm just going to skip that. So, dialing anxiety down. So already you've done a couple of things that help dial anxiety down. The big message here is about getting out of our head and into our body. Okay, getting out of our head into our body. And this is a quick strategy for you. You may like to teach it to some of your older kids. I did speak to the year 11s and 12s about this, but this one's for you again. Can you see so much of this is about how we come to our kids? And if we can settle our own nervous system, then we can respond with empathy. Okay? We can see it coming, we can respond, and we can help them to find their right strategy to move forward. Quick story, we were going to a destination on a very, very, very long road in Melbourne called Nicholson Street, and we ended up at the right address but in the wrong suburb. We were running late, and Pete starts to get stressed, and he doesn't get stressed much at all, which is probably why we're such a good match. But he does, parking the car in a multi-storey building, definitely, and under these circumstances, because we were running late, it was his friend's daughter's birthday. And I thought, perfect opportunity to teach the kids, or to remind the kids about this face strategy that I've been working on with them, right? So Pete's like, nearly flipping out, and I said to the kids, right, this face strategy, perfect opportunity to put this in practice. What does F stand for? Guess what Peter said? Loud and clear. They never heard that. F stands for focus on what you can control. And so, that's right, Peter stands for focus on what you can control. So, this is really powerful. It's so powerful as adults, gosh, so much time we spend focusing on things we can't do anything about, same with our kids. Focus on what you can control, and acknowledgement of how you are feeling and what you are thinking. Name it to tame it. Right? When we can accurately name, as I said earlier, name it, it can reduce psychological distress by up to 50%. Huge. Dan Siegel's work, The Whole Brain Child, you can read more about it and some of that other research, but it can reduce psychological distress just by being able to accurately name how we feel, hence the cushion I bought. So this is helpful for you, but it applies to your kids as well. You can teach them name it to tame it. You can help them find the right words. C is about coming back into your body. C is about coming back into your body. And there's lots of ways that you can do it, okay? We've already done the breath, okay? Exercise. Come back into your body through exercise, through the senses, and I've got a few things I want to show you. Coming back into your body is such a game changer. It's kind of like the circuit breaker for the alarm. You want to turn off the alarm. Can't really turn it off, as we know, it takes time. You just want to dial things back. And so come back into your body, and you might do that by just pressing your feet into the floor. I cannot tell you how much foot pressing into the floor I did when I had my daughter. And she would cry all the time. Just being present, just grounding myself. Come back into your body, whatever suits you. It could be the breath, it could be the feet, it could be movement, it could be slime, it could be, anything. It could be music, it could be, lots and lots and lots of things can help you come back. And I've got a big slide, but I'm going to give you lots of examples. And E is about engaging in what matters. It's about doing what's important next. Because so often we can get distressed, upset, anxious, and then we can sort of deal with it, but then we don't go back to what we were doing, which was probably making us anxious in the first place. A big project, something that's hard, something that makes us feel uncomfortable. So E is about get back on with it. And we want this for our kids as well. We want this for our kids. So I wanted you to have that, because it's a really good acronym. It's really powerful. And sometimes you'll just do F. Just remember what F stands for, okay? Focus on what you can. So this is what we want want for them. And as I said, it's, I'll be quick, out of their head and into their body. This is how we can dial down the alarm, okay? Out of their head and into their body, and there's lots of ways to do it. As I said, breath, movement, natural end to fight or flight, movement, shooting hoops, skipping rope, just dribbling, kicking a soccer ball, whatever it is that they want to do that they enjoy. Riding a bike, throwing the ball for the dog. Movement brings that fight or flight response to a natural end. And the senses is super powerful. This could be a really nice one in bed. It could be listening to music. It could be closing their eyes and just listening for what sounds they can hear. I always travel with you see the shoe chain? A bit more comfortable now. A citrus hand cream, because I think I just love burning essential oils, just purely for the scent, for the smell. And I realised I take this everywhere, and I actually, eventually, years ago, kind of realised, I'm naturally doing this because it grounds me. So the lotion's very strong scented. It's just, we all find things that ground us, and hopefully as adults we all know one or two things that might. We want our kids to know what works for them. And I didn't include that slide. I'm going to share with you some more examples. When it comes to grounding, and the examples just really relate to these three categories, so I'll share a few more with you verbally. So when it comes to the breath, I've talked about lengthening the exhale. I've also talked about the physiological sigh. And the reason we do that extra little sip of air is to really inflate the lungs, because when we are anxious, we become short and shallow in the way that we breathe. And sometimes you can be short and shallow in the way that you breathe for hours. And then, does anyone have a child that eventually goes, or says, I can't get a full breath? There's a few nods. That was me as a kid growing up. And yeah, so if they can just be breathing normally, regularly, that can really make a difference. Another breath that they can try, and for younger kids sometimes this can work well, is the box breath. Breathe in, hold, out, hold. And I don't like to put numbers on it because holding your breath can be uncomfortable for some people with anxiety. So the one I love and the one I use is the physiological sigh. And both my kids know, and I test them occasionally, I say, right, if you're feeling anxious or stressed, what's your tool that you can use? And they know, things like that breath. Hunter doesn't want to talk much, he's 15 and a boy, so he doesn't count. So the physiological sigh and lengthening the exhale when it comes to the breath, very powerful. Movement, I think we've covered movement off. Senses, I just want to share a couple of other things with you. So I have a box full of goodies here, you're welcome to come and have a look later. Can get messy, balloon filled with flour. Weird wriggly things from Kmart. Velvety, knobbly things from cheap stores like $2 shops. Right through to, these are quite expensive, these were gifted to me by a young man who has ADHD and anxiety, and he makes really cool fidgets out of bike parts because he was a bit embarrassed about going to school with this. So he makes some really nice sort of fidgets out of, you know, I probably can't see those, out of bike parts that, you know, this one spins, not very well, that's not the spinning one, there's another one in there. Things like this even, you know, this relates to movement I suppose, but just simply having something like this for maybe a younger child or even a teenager who just needs a reminder, I need to do something. Throw the dice, how many burpees we do? 11. Nobody likes burpees. But just try to find something. In COVID, because it was awful for us in COVID, we had in our house a ball made of this stuff. And every day you'd get out of your head into your body and we'd play catch. And that made a really, really big difference. So whether it's the senses, the breath or movement, don't try to do it all, that'll just make you anxious. Help your kids to find the thing that works for them. My kids know that you know, in COVID they were a bit younger. Throwing and catching that ball worked. They know the breath helps. Okay, just help them find their thing. And you find your thing too. What helps for you? Sometimes you might need to put a few together. Sometimes you need to string them together. I'm going to do a quick summary and I'm going to invite questions. So, I've shared a lot with you, I know, but I really hope I fulfilled those 4 promises, those key takeaways, which were that you get an understanding of what's happening in the brain, in your children. I think it creates more empathy naturally, because you're like, oh, I can't help it. I know that alarm's going off. I know that what's happening is not a choice, it's just what's happening for them. And so the alarm sounds because the brain has detected a threat. Validation and empathy is so powerful. Honestly, you think about when you share something with a friend, what you want to hear. Do you want them to jump into fix-it mode, which is very natural for 1/2 of the population? I won't say which half. But it is generally quite a natural thing for a lot of dads to want to fix things, especially because it's so painful when you see our kids suffering. Right, obviously being a bit silly, but in truth, it is hard for a lot of people. We find it very, very hard when our kids are upset. We want to make it better, but we are not meant to do that. Resilience comes by going through challenges and learning to manage them. You do not raise a resilient child by protecting them. As much as it breaks our hearts when they are distressed, they are anxious, they are suffering, it breaks our hearts. We want to just make it all better, but we are not helping. So think of it as a learning opportunity. I've tried that before. When something's going wrong, just try to remind yourself it's an opportunity for growth. It is hard, yes. Life is very hard. We know that. We know life will throw curveballs at them. We want them to be able to catch and return. They'll only learn that by you helping them regulate their emotions, bringing your calm, bringing your empathy, teaching them about their brain, and helping them understand anxiety for what it is. Okay, we want to nudge kids forward. If there is avoidance, what we want to do is we want to move kids forward towards that big goal slowly. Break it up into small parts. Nudge them forward slowly, slowly, slowly. And if there's school refusal, the school here are brilliant. You've got the most amazing wellbeing leaders and leadership in general. So lucky to be here. And those of you that aren't, you're so lucky just to be part of this beautiful community, because this event tonight has brought everybody together. And so reach out to the people that you might need a bit of extra support from if you need it. Okay? Don't be afraid to ask for help. And lucky last, use the FACE acronym, and remember that we can turn down anxiety by helping kids get out of their head and into their body. So, I wanted to give you a chance, and as I said, I'm happy to hang around afterwards to say g'day if you've got something you sort of wanted to have a quick chat with me about. But if you've got any questions, now's the time before I've just got a couple of other things to show you. Yes?
You mentioned medication before. Thank you for sharing that and being so open about it. I was just wondering, how does that relate to kids? Like, is there a certain age where it's okay for a kid that's really suffering to look into that, or is that more something that comes when they're older as adults, or are there any hard and fast rules around that?
You know the answer to that question, don't you? There's no hard and fast rules, but what I know is, because I talk to our GP regularly, not just about, sometimes we talk about this kind of thing, just as a bit of a chat, and he's primary school kids can be prescribed medication. It happens. Obviously teenagers as well. It's always best in conjunction with talk therapy. So it's not just something to take and to sort of solve the problem. It's about helping to reduce the sensitivity of the amygdala, okay, and it boosts the serotonin, so there's more regulation of mood, and it just gives that little bit of space to be able to go, like me in the supermarket when I was getting teary. Because I'm on medication, I was able to go, I can sense what's happening and I can do something about it. So I can function really, really well, even with anxiety. Because of it, that's what difference it makes for me. And so when it comes to it, I did an interview with, I can't remember his name, on the podcast all about medication. And we did speak about adults and children. And so that might be an interesting lesson for you. But yeah, it's case by case. But if kids are down here and it's getting in the way of daily functioning and there's just no ability to kind of pull them back and help them, it's worth a conversation. And with the GP, one of the things I love to say is if you're not sure where they're at, if they might need extra help, please go and ask the question. Okay, don't be unsure and wait. Go and see your GP because I remember when one of our kids was little, I was thinking, oh, you know, I think this could be a big problem. And the GP goes, actually, this seems pretty developmental to me. Not too concerned, let's watch and wait. And it didn't amount to anything. So it's not always going to be, you know, there can be a lot of, you know, good that can come out of it. Either way, it's good because kids who have anxiety that's a problem really benefit from help. Yes?
I don't know if this is quite relevant, but I've also noted kids, 17-year-olds, getting medication for, say, a week or 10 days, coming up to a big event.
Right,
I don't
so...
know what it is. I'm not able to see a doctor.
Yeah. Okay. The statement was around medication that's just for sort of 7 to 10 days in the lead up to something that's very stressful. It's not something that I'm aware of. But, yeah. Yeah, okay, thank you. Typically the medication that is prescribed, that is ongoing, is an SSRI, which is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which sounds very complex. Basically what it means is it stops, we make our own serotonin, which is sort of like our feel-good hormone, and it stops us breaking it down so quickly. So it's not like false serotonin, it's not synthetic serotonin, it's just a reuptake inhibitor. So it inhibits the reuptake of it, so you have more hanging around for longer. Any other questions? Yes?
How do you know what's teenage and what's severe anxiety?
When it comes to the anxiety, you'll typically see a combination of, and it's good to have those conversations to find out. So to try to find out what are the physical sensations that are coming with the emotional outbursts that you might be seeing, if that's what you're sort of alluding to. Yeah, because teenagers have a lot of, you know, there's a lot of brain change, a lot of hormonal changes and everything, and they're learning to regulate, and so there can be outbursts. So I would talk to your teenager about what are they feeling in their body, what are they thinking about, and start to see if you can put the pieces together. But if you're not sure, then I recommend maybe having a chat with the GP. You can go along, it depends on how old they are. If they're an older teenager, I think it's, thank you, I was going to say that, 16, I'm not sure if it's the same here, but yeah, they can go to the GP alone from 16 and up. But if you've got a good relationship, and you know, you can go with them to have that conversation. And if they're younger, you can have a chat about them without them there. One of the things I often get asked, and I had a mum a couple of weeks ago, and she just felt like, oh my gosh, I haven't been doing things the way that I'd like to do them from here on, and I feel like I've kind of wrecked things. Kind of, you know, that was sort of the language that she used. She said, I just don't think I can repair it, which that was catastrophic thinking. I could see from her point of view. She felt really distressed, obviously, about what had been happening. But what I want you all to know is that no matter what happens, if you've got a teenager who refuses to get help, you know they need it, they're not interested, please maintain the relationship. Don't fight with them, support them, offer what's available within you. You know, I interviewed Martine Oglethorpe, who's from Headspace, and she did a great interview with me about what all the things parents can do if their teenager doesn't want a bar of it. And I thought that was really helpful. So just maintain that relationship. That connection is what will take you through together. They need to know they've got someone they can count on. So even though you can see clear as day what needs to be done sometimes, you've got to stay the course with them and please make sure that relationship is strong. Please come and ask me other questions if you've got them after we finish. What I just wanted to let you know, I think I've said it already, go and see the GP. There are services that are available for you to reach out to. I do believe you can contact Headspace for a chat, even if your child is not a client of Headspace. And I think they take, it says there, 12 to 25. You know, there is help available for you as well as for your children. Okay, you don't have to do this alone. Please don't do this alone. And I'm obviously, hopefully, a resource. The podcast costs nothing for you. It's available. There's 98 episodes as of this Wednesday. And lots of amazing experts on lots of different topics related to anxiety. The books are obviously there, and yeah, just please, if there's a topic on the podcast you'd like me to do an interview about, I just did one on functional tic disorder, which is the teenage onset of tics, which is not Tourette's. Tourette's is different, that's younger onset, gradual onset. a lady wrote and said, this is what I'm going through, and I found an amazing woman to talk to and did an interview. So please take advantage of that. And please be patient too, because obviously if you do write to me, I will write back straight away. Just sometimes it takes me a while to find the right person. And I just want you to remember this. You are the most important person in your child's psychological, emotional, physical well-being, and you are integral to their resilience. You honestly are. This is one of the greatest findings in the adolescent and child psychology literature, that kids just need one caring adult, okay? The most common factor for children to develop resilience is at least one stable and committed relationship with hopefully a parent or a caregiver. Teachers play a big role as well. You are important, and it is absolutely imperative that you look after yourselves as well as looking after your beautiful children. So huge thank you again to Grandma for having me. Thank you so much for being here with me this evening. It's just been an absolute pleasure, so thank you.
That's the third time I've heard a presentation today from you gentlemen, and they've all been different. And they've sometimes said the same thing. Thank you so much for tailoring to each group. I really like the fact that we're in it together, that we deal with our students, that we work with our parents, and we work with our staff. And that will be our wellbeing approach moving forward, always looking at ways in which we can be in the partnership and support you. It's really exciting getting into the space of wellbeing, not so we can just sort of focus on it and look at all the downside and stuff like that. It's also the really positive stuff that comes out of having a really positive wellbeing culture. And as a school like Grammar, you know, I would have touched on it last week if you read the newsletter. I'm not going to sing to you tonight, but there is that notion that, you know, engaging our kids in really positive opportunities and experiences all the time. Fill the bucket, help them fill up. Let's work together on it. When we get to the bumps in the road, let's not just go, oh, it's all too hard. You'll be the case managers, but we will work with you. We've got a great team emerging here at Grammar. We've just put on a new counsellor as well. So we've got 2 counsellors now, which I think is a fantastic support for our teachers. There's more to come in this space. I think it's really important. I read some statistics today from Educator Online, and they surveyed 5,000 parents. 70% of the parents had wellbeing as their #1 priority for what they wanted to see out of their schools, their child's school. And I think we're all agreed with that. If we're in the business of growing great humans, then we need to give them those skills, and we're really willing and wanting to work with you to keep doing that. Jodie, sensational, great to have you here. I can't believe, you must be Tasmanian. I always reckon the Tasmanians walk around in t-shirts and shorts. But I guess being a Victorian's okay too, right? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Good night to our boarders who've been on, and boarding parents who've been online as well. Okay. Have a good night.